Tonight, cities around the world welcome the new year, while here in Canberra, the lack of midnight fireworks fails to dampen spirits. Also tonight, Australian-born Mary Donaldson to become Denmark's Queen after a shock abdication announcement. Hundreds vie to get their hands on the first coins featuring King Charles at the Royal Australian Mint. And David Warner announces his retirement from one-day international cricket. Yuma, good evening. Adrienne Francis with ABC News. The new year has been ushered in around the world in time-honoured style, with fireworks and parties galore. While most Australians have already recovered from any hangovers, some parts of the world are still waiting to celebrate. Here in Canberra, the decision to scrap the midnight fireworks caused some consternation when it was announced, but doesn't seem to have dampened spirits. Police instead are praising the behaviour of revellers.
True to their progressive nature, Canberrans celebrated the new year ahead of their time. A controversial decision to cut the midnight fireworks meant the nation's capital rang in 2024 3 hours early.
It'd be nice if it was midnight, yes, but I think everyone looks at Sydney.
But the choice didn't seem to bother the thousands of revellers who flocked to Lake Burley Griffin for the 9 p.m. show.
I think it's a lot more accessible for there are a lot of young kids here. It's good for families, and I'm quite happy being here not at midnight. Might go to bed early.
We like sleeping.
Yeah.
There won't be much sleeping in the Walsh household after baby Evie made a surprise entrance into the world nearly 2 weeks before her due date.
The doctor last night said, "Oh, you might have one of the first in ACT," and I was like, "No, that's only 3 hours away. We're not ready for that."
Mum Jessica and Dad Daniel welcoming their second child just 28 minutes after midnight.
It's going to be very expensive December, January for the rest of our lives.
It was a much calmer night for police, who could count on just one hand how many people were arrested for antisocial behaviour overnight. 5 people were taken into custody because of their level of intoxication. But police aren't taking their finger off the pulse just yet, with double demerits to remain in place until midnight tonight. In the meantime, there's still plenty of time to set a New Year's resolution.
Just to be happy and healthy, I think, for 2024.
Lose weight. Pretty much that's about it.
And to squeeze the rest out of what's left of the holidays. Before setting sail into a new year. Jade Toomey, ABC News, Canberra.
What fun. In Sydney, hundreds of thousands of people flocked to the harbour to ring in the new year with a fireworks display over some of Australia's best-known landmarks. Several vantage points filled up early, with some even camping out overnight to snag a good spot. Visitors came from around the world to see the spectacle over the Harbour Bridge and the Opera House. It's estimated around 1 million people watched the fireworks from the foreshore and from boats on the harbour.
Sydney, that's crazy. Those fireworks are once in a lifetime. When I was like, we always wanted to come here.
Pretty amazing. I've seen a few fireworks in my time, and that was probably the best I've seen. Amazing.
As the seconds tick down around the world, people rang in the new year with prayers, parties and more fireworks. In France, the Champs-Élysées sparkled while tens of thousands cheered New York's crystal-clad ball drop in Times Square.
A show like no other. London's famous skyline lit up with drones, a stunning sight for the hundreds of thousands who lined the shore. Across the Channel, in the City of Light, a spectacular show along the Champs-Élysées, gearing up for this year's Paris Olympic Games. While in Berlin, tens of thousands welcomed the new year at the iconic Brandenburg Gate.
For every one of us, I simply wish us luck, happiness and lots of good health.
There were celebrations with an ancient twist in Athens at the Acropolis. And millions converged on Hong Kong's Victoria Harbour for a 12-minute display.
Happy New Year!
In Bangkok, revellers came out in droves, partying on the streets and making New Year's resolutions.
I hope to see a better opportunity in work and in love.
It was a more solemn occasion in Tokyo where the faithful gathered to quite literally ring in 2024 at this Buddhist temple.
It's nice to welcome the new year gently.
On the grander side, Dubai celebrated with a one-of-a-kind pyrotechnics display at the world's tallest skyscraper, the Burj Khalifa. And no New Year's Eve would be complete without the ball being dropped in New York City. A hopeful start to 2024. Sammy Clare, ABC News.
A shock New Year's abdication in Denmark has paved the way for Australia's first Queen. Princess Mary is set to be installed as Queen Consort to Crown Prince Frederik when he becomes the Danish King later this month. The stunning series of events completes a fairy tale 20 years in the making for the once Tasmanian law student.
It was a royal message that caught Danes by surprise. During her New Year's Eve speech, Queen Margrethe II announced she would abdicate.
2024. I have decided that now is the right time. I will step down as the Queen of Denmark. I will pass the throne to my son, Crown Prince Frederik.
As the Crown Prince becomes king, the princess becomes queen. Mary's stunning elevation to a ruler of Denmark was a story that started 20 years ago, when the pair had a chance meeting at a Sydney bar during the 2000 Olympics. For hours, the 28-year-old didn't know who he was. The romance grew, and a year later she moved to Denmark, where she quickly learned to speak the language.
At du fejede benene væk under mig, og at vi vågede at falde for hinanden.
A spectacular royal wedding in 2004 soon followed, when the Tasmanian commoner became a Danish princess.
Everyone who meets Frederik sees something special in him, and I've definitely seen that special something as well. And it's his warmth. He has a very kind heart. He's charming, he's courageous. He makes a good whole.
Her beginnings were humble, a state high school where her principal said she was a natural leader. Teachers could sense her potential. This is Taroona in Hobart and the very spot where Mary grew up. No one could have predicted that one day she would be royalty, but there's a lot of affection for her and excitement is building as people realise we're about to get Australia's first Queen.
What a great ambassador for Australia. So terrific. She'll make a very good Queen, I reckon.
She deserves it. She's lovely.
She carries herself extremely well. It's doing us proud.
These royals have 4 children, a daughter, son and twins, and they've tried to give them as normal an upbringing as possible. There'll be no formal coronation, just an announcement by the palace, and their lives will change. Meg Whitfield, ABC News, Hobart.
In WA, police have confirmed a 6-year-old boy and a 4-year-old girl died after being pulled from Perth's Swan River ahead of New Year's Eve celebrations. Bystanders rushed to the rescue of the children, but neither child survived.
As families gathered to ring in the new year with a fireworks spectacular, a tragedy was unfolding just metres away. 2 children found unresponsive in the river.
There's this guy, he's got a red backpack, and there's 2 kids that are just floating in the water. And he just rushed over, jumped in, pulled them out of the water. There was a woman who said she was a nurse. She came over and started doing CPR.
All this in front of a crowd of onlookers as dozens of police and paramedics arrived.
You know, there's a lot of panic and chaos, and that's when the mother came over, and oh my God, as soon as she came over, she dropped on the floor.
I saw these 2 children was walking in close to water, but I just feel sorry now why I didn't stop these 2 kids to going close to water. I thought the parents is here.
The children were taken to hospital, but neither survived. WA Police today confirming their ages. The girl was 4 and the boy 6. They were known to each other, but from different families. It's not clear how they got into the water or if they could swim.
I think we probably really need to be mindful that we've got two families here who have lost children. The coronial process is quite a matter-of-fact and clinical process, and I think we just need to be mindful and allow them to grieve.
Royal Lifesaving WA says summer is the deadliest period and it's urging people to be safe around waterways in the coming months. It's also calling for greater subsidies of swimming lessons amid rising costs of living.
Kids aren't learning to swim and kids aren't learning the most basic of foundation skills to be able to look after themselves. Sadly, we're seeing cost of living becoming a real factor. So there is opportunities in schools, but not all schools are doing swim lessons. And often the swim lessons is still the cost of the getting into the pool, there's still the cost of the bus.
Royal Lifesaving Australia says rivers and creeks made up 13% of all drowning deaths in WA in the 12 months to June. Rebecca Trigger, ABC News.
South Australian police have charged a Queensland truck driver over yesterday's horrific rail collision near the South Australian and New South Wales border that killed 2 train drivers. As tributes flow for the men, an investigation is examining what went wrong at the remote level crossing.
Mick Warren and his co-worker Kevin Baker were killed when the freight train they were driving collided with a truck at this level crossing at Bindara Station near the New South Wales-South Australian border. Today, cranes from Adelaide arriving to clean up the chaos, with SA Police describing the scene as horrific.
The impact of the crash caused the locomotive to catch fire and several train carriages to derail.
Police have charged a 75-year-old truck driver from Queensland with 2 counts of causing death by dangerous driving. Meanwhile, tributes have begun to flow for the men who lost their lives on the job, including from the Chief Operating Officer of the freight company, who became emotional as he reflected on their deaths.
There's no doubt we're all feeling it across PN. It's not something we wish upon anyone. We expect all of our employees to come home safely, and unfortunately we had a tragic loss of life.
Without commenting on the court process, of which there have been very serious charges laid against the driver of the road train, my thoughts are with the families of these 2 drivers who went to work and never came home.
A number of the crew working to clear the wreckage today were familiar with the 2 men and say it's a tragic start to the new year. The barrier highway was closed in both directions between Peterborough and the New South Wales border as investigators continued to examine the scene. The driver didn't apply for bail. He'll face Port Pirie Magistrates Court tomorrow. Bill Ormond, ABC News, Bindara Station.
There's been an outpouring of grief and tributes from the international cycling community over the death of world champion cyclist Melissa Hoskins. Police say the 32-year-old was hit by a car outside her Adelaide home on Saturday night and later died in hospital. Her husband, fellow international cyclist Rowan Dennis, has been charged over her death.
A champion rider whose death has devastated the cycling community.
She was one of those energetic people that had the charisma that drew everybody in towards her.
A 2015 world champion and a 2-time Olympian, Melissa Hoskins was a cycling star, both in the velodrome and on the road. But her life was cut short when she was struck by a car outside her home in Adelaide, dying in hospital on New Year's Eve. Her husband, fellow world champion cyclist Rowan Dennis, has been charged with causing her death by dangerous driving.
And still subject to investigation, so at this point in time it's too early to make any comment about that.
Miss Hoskins was no stranger to the track podium, but conquered her weaknesses to become Queen of the Mountains in 2015.
Best way to get a great result out of Mel Hoskins? Tell her she wasn't good enough. Tell her that she couldn't do it, and she would prove you wrong invariably.
Fellow Olympian Anna Mears paid tribute, saying, "I have a very heavy heart. This is a very difficult and tragic time." While national body Oz Cycling said Melissa, a mother, daughter and wife, was also a champion cyclist who thrilled and inspired us with her exquisite skills. In an interview in 2012, Melissa spoke about what motivated her to find success.
My coach once said to me, "You've got this opportunity to do something extraordinary and the rest of your life to be ordinary." So,
Miss Hoskins married Mr Dennis in 2018 and had 2 children. Her husband only recently retired, ending a career that included Olympic medals and a Tour de France stage victory. The 33-year-old has been bailed to appear in the Adelaide Magistrates Court in March. Ethan Ricks, ABC News.
It was labelled the biggest loophole in Australian healthcare history by the Minister, but today it's been slammed shut. A nationwide crackdown on disposable vapes is now enforced, aimed largely at curbing skyrocketing rates of teenage vaping in Australia.
A resolution for some already up in smoke.
Have you vaped today already?
Yes, I did in the morning.
But a national crackdown could kick the habit.
I don't know, I still reckon I'll be able to get it. They'll still sell it somewhere.
By the end of 2024, we're hoping it's going to be a much more difficult situation to get your hands on a vape than it is right now. Right now, we absolutely have a free-for-all where corner shops are just disregarding the law and selling them to young people.
From today, the importation of all single-use vapes is banned. From March 1st, the importation crackdown broadens to all other non-therapeutic vapes, including refillables. Retailers can still sell nicotine-free vapes, but only to run down stocks. All doctors and nurse practitioners can now prescribe nicotine vapes to help smokers quit. Therapeutic vapes, shrouded in plain packaging, can only be purchased in pharmacies.
It will put more strain on our workload, but I am sure that pharmacists will gladly step up and assist patients everywhere.
Despite it being illegal for retailers to sell vapes with nicotine, these are widely available. The government's next step will be to make commercial supply an offence.
That's when we'll start to see vapes vanishing from shops.
I think that black market is going to be increasingly one that's dominated by organised crime, because it's much easier to stop your local friendly vape store.
The education sector is expecting the ban to bring challenges.
We are concerned about the behaviours that we might see from our children, because what we now have is another generation of nicotine addicts, and going through that withdrawal.
A public health problem it's hoped will this year run out of puff. Emily Lawrence, ABC News.
The arrival of the new year has been marked by the Royal Australian Mint in traditional style, with the pressing of the first coins of 2024. Hundreds of coin collectors and enthusiasts, also known as numismatists, lined up outside the Mint, keen to get their hands on the first dollar coins featuring the effigy of King Charles.
Hundreds of coin enthusiasts were up bright and early this morning, hoping to have the honour of minting the very first coin of 2024.
And it looks like we've got a winner.
12-year-old Isabel Zaharis was the lucky winner of this year's ballot.
I didn't think it was my number, and then I was like, wait, but that is my number. Does that mean I got the coin?
Making an early start for the journey from home in Wollongong.
There was a lot of shaking of the bed at 6:45 this morning to get her awake to get here. So, yeah, not earlier either.
In collaboration with the Australian Space Agency, this year's coin theme is out of this world.
Yeah, it's going to be great that, you're going to be at the shop and you get a dollar coin, and it's going to be about Australia in space. That's a rare opportunity to have people appreciate a little bit about what's going on, incorporate and experience a little bit of what we're doing.
Celebrating Australia's advancements in the Great Space Race.
It certainly captures some elements like the moon landings, from Moon to Mars, the Australian Space Agency, rovers, the first satellites that Australia had, which actually was launched in 1967.
New coins that for the first time will feature the effigy of King Charles.
Today is an opportunity for the public to get a coin that's got King Charles's effigy on it, which is really quite special. So there were several hundred people that were lined up out there.
Another new year, welcoming exciting new change. Ethan French, ABC News, Canberra.
A previously secret document released for the first time today reveals how Australia came to join the US-led invasion of Iraq in 2003. It's one of more than 200 documents released by the National Archives of Australia at the end of their 20-year confidentiality period. Despite this, most of the Howard government's conversations about the war remain secret. Here's political reporter Evelyn Manfield.
Saddam Hussein and his sons must leave Iraq within 48 hours. Their refusal to do so will result in military conflict, commenced at a time of our choosing.
A call to arms which Australia would join.
The government strongly believes that the decision it's taken is right.
Signalling the deployment of Australian troops joining what was called the Coalition of the Willing.
These are the sorts of things that do keep you awake at night.
Previously secret cabinet documents released only now, 20 years on, by the National Archives show what then Prime Minister John Howard told his cabinet that very morning. That he'd had extensive discussions with the President of the United States and the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom concerning the disarmament of Iraq of weapons of mass destruction and the possible use of force against Iraq if it failed to disarm. Also noting a request by the President that Australia participate in military action. The Howard government signed up, a move that divided both the Parliament and the public.
The government is taking us down the wrong path.
The mission in Iraq was to find weapons of mass destruction. Weapons, it would turn out, weren't there.
On the basis of the information we had at the time, we made what we believe was the right decision, and I still believe on that basis of that information it was the right decision.
For the government here in Canberra, the war in Iraq was the #1 issue of 2003, but it barely gets a mention in these documents. Most of the Australian government's discussions about the war were held at Cabinet's National Security Committee, and those records remain secret.
What we hope to see in due course is release of those records, which will help to give a fuller picture.
As with 2023, Indigenous affairs were in the spotlight in 2003. The Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Commission, or ATSIC, under review and later dumped.
On ATSIC, I think we made the wrong decision. It would have been better for Australia for ATSIC to continue.
Records also show Cabinet discussed but didn't support an emissions trading scheme after the PM met with industry leaders. In the year to follow, John Howard would be re-elected for a 4th and final term. Evelyn Manfield, ABC News, Canberra.
Israeli warplanes have intensified attacks on central Gaza as Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu warns that the war will go on for many more months. The Palestinian Red Crescent shared vision showing rescue workers in Khan Yunis following what it says were Israeli attacks. Airstrikes pounded central Gaza, killing 10 people and driving more to flee to Rafah on the border with Egypt. Meanwhile, the Israeli Defence Force says it will allow some reservists to return home to help the economy as the conflict continues into the new year. Veteran Australian journalist and documentary filmmaker John Pilger has died in the UK, aged 84. He grew up in Bondi before working overseas as a reporter and foreign correspondent, winning an Emmy, a BAFTA and the Sydney Peace Prize during his career. Pilger was renowned for his coverage of international conflicts, including in Vietnam, Cambodia and East Timor. He was a staunch critic of Australia's treatment of Indigenous people and in recent years advocated on behalf of Julian Assange. To sport now, and in cricket, Australian opening batter David Warner has announced his immediate retirement from one-day cricket on the eve of his last Test match. Warner was the top scorer for Australia during the recent World Cup, but says he's retiring from Test and one-day cricket with no regrets after a career with many ups and some downs.
The Sydney Test is now a traditional pink and synonymous with Glenn McGrath's Breast Care Nurses Foundation. But this year, McGrath's sharing the stage with a local kid from Matraville.
A boy from Housing Commission having a dream. I've not always fitted the mould, but I've been authentic and honest.
David Warner burst onto the scene as a T20 slugger well before he'd even played for his state. But there was only ever one goal.
For me, it was always about playing Test cricket for Australia.
It's a journey that's netted him more than 8,600 Test runs. But there were also the dark days that came with a one-year ban from Test cricket for his role in the ball tampering affair.
I've got no regrets because you're going to have a lot of hurdles that you have to jump. There's going to be obstacles in the way, but you have to move forward, and I've done that with dignity.
Heading into his 112th and last Test, David Warner's record stands up with the best of them. He scored more runs than any other Australian opener and sits 5th on the list of all-time Australian batters.
I'm definitely retiring from one-day cricket as well. It does allow me to go and play some other leagues around the world.
But he still wants to play T20 internationals for Australia, while also plying his trade as a gun for hire in tournaments around the world. But first, one last test, and one last opening partnership with his great childhood mate, Usman Khawaja.
When you're childhood friends and you get to go out here at the SCG as kids, as you know, dreaming big, it's a great fitting. You know, I'm loving that.
Not many get to finish on their own terms, but David Warner will. David Mark, ABC News, Sydney.
Former world #1 Naomi Osaka has made a winning return to tennis with a straight sets victory at the Brisbane International. The four-time major winner was rusty after a 15-month absence from the tour, but says she's determined to get back to her very best.
Just 6 months on from the birth of her daughter, Naomi Osaka was back on court to the delight of her Australian fans. And it took her no time to get the feel of the Brisbane court.
Well, she certainly hasn't lost any strength in the last 15 months.
Osaka racing through the first set against Germany's Tamara Korpach, but the world number 83 fought back, forcing the second set to a tiebreak.
She'll take the mini break into the change of ends.
But Osaka dug deep, progressing to the second round where she'll meet former #1 Karolina Pliskova.
Naomi Osaka is back in business in Brisbane.
The new mother full of love for her fans.
The last couple years that I played before, you know, I had my daughter, I didn't return as much love as I was given, so I really feel like that's what I want to do in this chapter.
There was plenty of love for Novak Djokovic in Perth last night as Serbia started its United Cup campaign. The 24-time Grand Slam champion and world #1 blasting his way into the new year. Although his Chinese opponent Zhizhen Zhang put up some resistance.
Oh, he made it. Magnificent pass, but a bit of volley.
It wasn't enough, however, Djokovic winning comfortably.
The 2024 season off to a brilliant start for Novak Djokovic.
A strong start also for the #1 woman, Iga Swiatek, crushing Sara Sorribes-Tormo.
Oh, what a combo.
Swiatek's domination from the baseline, giving her opponent no time to settle in the Perth sunshine. Her victory setting up a crucial mixed doubles decider against Spain. In Sydney, Norway kept its hopes alive, coming from behind to beat Croatia. Kasper Ruud impressing in his singles match against Borna Koric, before teaming with Ulrike Akiri to claim a win. Garrett Mundy, ABC News.
To the weather now, and Happy New Year to all our community photographers who share their weather observations. Andrew Leung was lakeside for last night's fireworks. Chris Elsley captured the fireworks over Commonwealth Avenue Bridge, and Timothy Mott gazed down from Mount Ainslie. Thank you, Andrew, Chris and Tim. And don't forget to send us your best shots of Canberra and its weather this year. Canberra weather pics at abc.net.au. After a low of 14 in the valley, we reached a top of 28 today. Around our region, there were light showers over parts of the Illawarra and Braidwood. Griffith got to 36, Goulburn and Cooma 24, Bega reached 25 degrees. Across the country, Broome and Alice got to 37 today, but just 21 for Hobart, and severe weather is continuing to hit southeast Queensland. The Gold Coast is on high alert after slow-moving thunderstorms dumped more than 400 millimetres of rain in some parts of the region, and more on the way. A trough will linger near the northern New South Wales coast until tomorrow or Wednesday, while a ridge of high pressure extends across the remainder of the east. Another trough is developing over the inland and is forecast to deepen tomorrow before moving east later in the week. That pattern will generate showers and thunderstorms for much of our region. Tomorrow, storms for Darwin and showers are forecast for North Queensland, Brisbane and Melbourne. Cloudy elsewhere. It's looking partly cloudy with showers right around our region. A possible thunderstorm for Yass Valley and 28, Nowra and Batemans Bay 28, Eden 27, Thredbo a possible storm and 16. There's a similar forecast for Canberra with a low of 15 before a cloudy day and a top of 27, light winds and a high chance of showers, most likely in the afternoon and evening, and the chance of a thunderstorm. The sun will rise at 5:48 a.m. and set at 8:26 p.m. Looking ahead, heavier showers and the possibility of thunderstorms are forecast over the next few days, particularly on Thursday, with up to 15 millimetres forecast. Partly cloudy conditions from Friday on. And that's the very latest from the Canberra newsroom. I'm Adrienne Francis. Great to be with you. Happy New Year, Yarra, and good night.